Good morning. How are you today? Today we're going to be talking about Curia Julia uh, in just a minute. But when we watch the video, what you'll notice is there's always a bleed over from the previous podcast over to the next. It just so happens that the previous podcast bleeds over more than half of the current video. So I want to just kind of go back and just kind of remind you of what this was. So the first part of the video that you will see in a moment, you'll remember we discussed last time about the Arch of Titus. And so here's a picture of it. You can go back to podcast 18 and watch that. Here is a side view of it. And inside the archway, there were a lot of relief panels that were discussed and things like that. And the header up there, the word inscriptions and things like, and a map and the general location of it. So today, what we're going to be doing is discussing the Curia Julia. And what this was, it was the Senate House. So if in our day, it would be the Capitol in Washington, D.C., the Senate side. So that would be kind of like what that is that you're seeing there. So let's go to the video, and I'll catch you on the other side.
Way within the arch. Both commemorate the joint triumph celebrated by Titus and his father Vespasian in the summer of 71 AD. The south panel depicts the spoils taken from the temple in Jerusalem. The golden candelabrum or menorah is the main focus and is carved in deep relief. Other sacred objects being carried in the triumphal procession are the gold trumpets, the fire pans for removing the ashes from the altar, and the table of shew bread. These spoils were likely originally colored gold with the background in blue. In 2012, the Arch of Titus Digital Restoration Project discovered remains of yellow ochre paint on the menorah relief. The Curia Julia is the third named Curia, or Senate House, in the ancient city of Rome. It was built in 44 BC, when Julius Caesar replaced Faustus Cornelius Sulla's reconstructed Curia Cornelia.
All right. So you saw what I was saying, that the Curia Julia only just took up just a little bit. So I'm assuming that in episode 20, which, by the way, happens to be the last episode of the Roman Forum series, so it'll probably have a bit more detail about the Curia Julia. So what I wanted to kind of talk about today, I'll go ahead and do the reading like we normally do. Get just a hair feedback. One moment, please. I'm getting a little too much. Okay. Hope that you can hear me okay. Yeah. So the Curia Julia, in Latin, it's Curia Ilia. In Italian, same, Curia Ilia, is the third named Curia or Senate House. So this is the third Senate House building that existed in the ancient city of Rome. It was built in 44 BC when Julius Caesar replaced Faustus Cornelius Sulla's reconstructed Curia Cornelia, which itself had been replaced by the Curia Hostilia. Caesar did so to redesign both spaces within the Comitium and the Roman Forum. Excuse me. Got my coffee from McDonald's. The alterations within the Comitium reduced the prominence of the Senate and cleared the original space. The work, however, was interrupted by Caesar's assassination at the Curia of Pompeii, the theater of Pompeii, where the Senate had been meeting temporarily while the work was completed. The project was eventually finished by Caesar's successor, Augustus Caesar, in 29 BC. The Curia Julia is one of a handful of Roman structures that survive mostly intact today. This is due to its conversion into the Basilica of Sant Andriana al Foro in the 7th century and several later restorations. However, the roof, the upper elevations of the side walls, and the rear facade are modern and date from the remodeling of the deconsecrated church in the 1930s. A little history. There were many curia buildings or senate houses during the history of the Roman civilization, many of them existing at the time. Curia means simply meeting house, while the Senate met regularly at the Curia within the common medium space. There were many other structures designed for it to meet when the need occurred. And you'll see a picture of it. It is a rather small space, so if there were a need to have a large audience, they probably moved to a different building. An example of a moving the meeting would be with someone who was not allowed to enter the sanctified curias of the Senate. The Curia Julia, again, is the third named curia within the comitium. Each structure was rebuilt a number of times, but originated from a single Etruscan temple built to honor the truce of the Sabine conflict. When this original temple was destroyed, Tullus Hostilius rebuilt it and gave it its name. It lasted for a few hundred years until the Curia was destroyed by fire from the impromptu funeral of Publius Clodius Pulcher. A new structure was then dedicated to its financial benefactor, Faustus Cornelius Sulla. In fact, the structure now in the Forum is the second incarnation of Caesar's Curia from 81 to 96 AD. The Curia Julia was restored under Emperor Domitian. In 283 AD, it was heavily damaged by fire at the time of Emperor Carinus from 284 to 305. The Curia was then rebuilt by Diocletian, and its remnants of Diocletian's building that stands today. In 412 AD, the Curia was restored again, this time by the urban prefect Annius Euchris Epiphanes. On July 10, 1923, the Italian government acquired the Curia Julia and the adjacent convent of the church S. Andriano from the Collegio or di Spagna, probably a college, for approximately 16,000 liras or pounds. Liras. Not sure. A description of the building. The exterior of the Curia Julia features a brick-based concrete with huge buttress at each angle. The lower part of the front wall was decorated with slabs of marble. The upper part was covered with stucco, limitation of white marble blocks. A single flight of steps leads up to the bronze doors. The current bronze doors are modern replicas. The original bronze doors were transferred to the Basilica of St. John Lateran by Pope Alexander the 7th in 1660. A coin was found within the doors during their transfer. That allowed archaeologists to date repairs made to the Senate House and the addition of the bronze doors to the reign of Emperor Domitian, 81 to 96. The original appearance of the Senate House is known from an Emperor Augustus denarius coin, 28 BC, which shows the veranda held up by columns on the front wall of the building. The interior of the Curia Julia is fairly austere, simple. The hall is 25.2 meters long by 17.61 meters wide. There are 3 broad steps that could have fitted 5 rows of chairs, or a total of about 300 senators. The walls are stripped, but originally veneered in marble 2/3 of the way up. The 2 main features of the interior of the Curia Julia are its altar of victory and its striking floor, which I'll show a picture. At the far end of the hall could be found the altar of victory. It consisted of a statue of Victoria, the personification of victory, standing on a globe, standing a reed. The altar was placed in the Curia by Augustus to celebrate Rome's military prowess, more specifically his own victory at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. The altar was removed in 384 AD as part of a general backlash against the pagan traditions of ancient Rome after the rise of Christianity. The other main feature of Curia's interior, the floor, is in contrast to the building's colorless exterior. Featured on the floor is the Roman art technique of opus sectile, in which the materials are cut. Let me go ahead and show pictures of that. That's a side view right there of it. And here's a more close-up side view. You're seeing the front there with the bronze doors. There's a 3D, excuse me, model of it, what it would look like in the heyday back in, and let me see if I can get another picture. One moment. Properties. I mean, it's really pretty. Right there. Yeah. So this is the interior showing the floor. Okay. Done. All right. So let me move it over. I think it's a little bit better. There we go. All right. Make it a little smaller. You got to see my beauty, or you don't have to. Trying to be fun. Okay, so the other main feature of the Curia's interior, the floor, which you see there in the picture, is in contrast to the building's colorless exterior, which you saw. And of course, you can see the wall here would be the same on the outside. Featured on the floor is the Roman art technique of opus sectile, I guess creating different tiles in their images, in which materials are cut and inlaid into walls and floors to make pictures or patterns. There you go. That is described by Claridge as stylized rosettes in squares alternate with opposed pairs of entwined cornucopias and rectangles, all worked in green and red porphyry on the backgrounds of Numidian yellow, Vidrin purple. Wow, that's a lot. And I believe to the right is the altar there, altar of victory. It was it consisted of a statue of Victoria. Oh, I guess that's in the back. I'm sorry. The altar of victory consisted of statue of Victoria, that in red, personification of victory standing on a globe, and standing wreath. The altar was placed in the Curia by Augustus to celebrate Rome's military prowess. Okay. And so, yeah, okay. All right. The significance of it. So, in his Res Gestae Divi Augusti, Augustus, Emperor Augustus, writes of the project: I built the Senate House with the power of the state entirely in my hands by universal consent. I extinguished the flames of civil wars and then relinquished my control, transferring the republic back to the authority of the Senate and the Roman people. For this service, I was named Augustus by decree of the Senate. In fact, the relinquishment of power was truer in word than in deed. Construction of the Curia Julia coincided with the end of the Republic in Rome. In the past, the Curia Hostilia and Comitium were oriented by cardinal points of the compass, which may have marked them out specifically augurated space and at any rate set them off obliquely from the forum rectangle that formed over the centuries. Breaking with tradition, the Curia Julia was reoriented by Julius Caesar on a more rational line, squared it up with the rectangular lines of the forum, and even more closely with his new forum, to which the new Senate House formed an architectural appendage more in keeping with the Senate's increasing subordination. The reduced power of the Roman Senate during the imperial period is reflected by Curius Julia's less prominent location and orientation. Still, the two buildings had similarities. Both Curia Hostilis Tablia Valera and the Curia Julia's altar of victory in the Curia Julia attest to the enduring preeminence of Rome's military despite the reduced role of the Senate. All right, I believe that'll do it on the reading. Let me pull up another picture. Let's see. That's tight, but one moment. I'll show you the doors. These are the bronze doors. One moment. Okay. And then let me move it down. And right there. So let me. Move it over. Yeah. So that kind of shows you what the doors look like. Yeah. You know, in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Parthenon, they have doors on the opposite end entryway that kind of look like that. I remember. They're huge, huge doors. They stand like 20, 25 feet high and about 10 feet across. Yeah, I remember. Wow. Hmm. Okay. So maybe cover a little bit about dictator Julius Caesar. All right. Now we've talked about Julius Caesar. He wasn't actually named a dictator. I mean, named emperor. Uh, he was assassinated prior to that. So, but he was known as the dictator. So this is the Tusculium portrait. It's possibly the only surviving sculpture of Caesar made during his lifetime. So that would have been what he looked like. He was born in 12 July 100 BC in Suburra, Rome. He died 15 March 44 BC, age 55, at the theater of Pompeii in Rome. His cause of death was assassination by stab wounds. Yeah, well known event. So, uh, Gaius Julius Caesar, again, 12 July 100 BC to 15 March 44 BC. He was a Roman general and a statesman, a member of the first triumvirate. Caesar led the Roman armies in the Gallic Wars before defeating his political rival Pompey in a civil war and subsequently became dictator from 49 BC until his assassination in 44 BC. He played a critical role in the events that led to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. In 60 BC, Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey formed the first triumvirate, an informal political alliance that dominated Roman politics for several years. Their attempts to amass political power were opposed by many in the Senate, among them Cato the Younger, with the private support of Cicero. Caesar rose to become one of the most powerful politicians in the Roman Republic through a string of military victories in the Gallic War, completed by 51 BC, which greatly extended Roman territory. During this time, he both invaded Britain and built a bridge across the River Rhine. These achievements and the support of his veteran army threatened to eclipse the standing of Pompey, who had realigned himself with the Senate after the death of Crassus in 53 BC. With the Gallic Wars concluded, the Senate ordered Caesar to step down from his military command and return to Rome. In 49 BC, Caesar openly defied the Senate's authority by crossing the Rubicon and marching towards Rome at the head of an army. This began Caesar's civil war, which he won, leaving him in a position of near unchallenged power and influence in 45 BC. After assuming control of the government, Caesar began a program of social and governmental reform, including the creation of the Julian calendar. He gave citizenship to many residents of far regions of the Roman Republic. He initiated land reforms to support his veterans and initiated an enormous building program. In early 44 BC, he was proclaimed dictator for life, uh, which means dictator perpetual. Fearful of his power and domination of the state, a group of senators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar on the Ides of March, 15 March. Wow, that was yesterday. Today's the 16th. Wow. In 44 BC, a new series of Civil wars then broke out, and the constitutional government of the Republic was never fully restored. Caesar's great nephew and adopted heir Octavian, later known as Augustus, rose to sole power after defeating his opponents in the last civil war of the Roman Republic. Octavian set about solidifying his power, and the era of the Roman Empire began. All right. Well, I think that'll be enough for today. I'll let you review the video again, catch you on the other side. Uh, the reason for the video review is to get a little reinforcement. Catch you on the other side.
Way within the arch. Both commemorate the joint triumph celebrated by Titus and his father Vespasian in the summer of 71 AD. The south panel depicts the spoils taken from the temple in Jerusalem. The golden candelabrum or menorah is the main focus and is carved in deep relief. Other sacred objects being carried in the triumphal procession are the gold trumpets, the fire pans for removing the ashes from the altar, and the table of shew bread. These spoils were likely originally colored gold with a background in blue. In 2012, the Arch of Titus Digital Restoration Project discovered remains of yellow ochre paint on the menorah relief. The Curia Julia is the third named curia, or Senate House, in the ancient city of Rome. It was built in 44 BC, when Julius Caesar replaced Faustus Cornelius Sulla's reconstructed Curia Cornelia.
All right. So before we go, let me show you the map. I never did show you that. I apologize. All right. So to the lower right is the Colosseum. So it's on the opposite side of the Roman Forum. On the left is the Via Sacra Road. On the right, the Via dei Fori Imperiali Road. So you can see there in the blue where this structure was at. So, yeah. All right. You'll catch us on the table talk at 10 o'clock. We're going to be showing the SpaceX Starship IFT-3 launch. This was the third integrated flight test, hence IFT, for the Starship. It got further into its mission profile, so the ship did make it into orbit, went all the way over to the Indian Ocean, and dropped into the ocean. But apparently, the rotation, they had some issues with some Starship rotating, and at first I thought it might have been to get even heating, but that wasn't the case. But as it was coming into the atmosphere, toward the deepest part of the atmosphere where the heating was extremely intense, the plasma heating on what would normally be abated by the thermal protection system on the bottom, the black tiles, apparently as it was rotating was also hitting the stainless steel. So that exceeded the temperature of the steel, 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit would be exceeding the temperature of stainless steel. So it most likely burned up, burned holes in it and, broke up into the ocean. The booster from the hot staging, you'll see it if you were to look at it, watch it with us. It also splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico. Still not quite at the ocean surface, but 4,000 or 5,000 feet up. And the problem there was not all the engines needed to slow it down, fired up, and or restarted. So it too broke up there. Now, both vehicles were intended to splash down in the ocean. They were not intended on this flight to return back to Boca Chica, Texas. So as far as the objectives it met most of the objectives expected for this flight. So we continue onward to now get the spacecraft and the booster back on shore at Boca Chica. Now, if you're wanting to know how that's going to happen, the launch tower there with its arms called Godzilla or Motzilla, something like that. Anyway, it will catch it. The tower arms will catch both the booster and the ship in mid-flight. So, yeah, looking forward to that sometime in the future. There's going to be 6 or 7 more flights this year. They're obviously test flights to continue to work out all the mission profile, objectives, and flight profiles, and get it perfected, get the technology perfected. And then I think the focus will move toward NASA's moon human landing system, which they're expecting to send astronauts to ride the Starship down to the lunar surface, and then on to Mars. Wow. So catch me at 10 o'clock on the tabletop, show you the IFT3 launch. All right, well, that'll do it for the Roman Forum. This was episode 19 of 20. Next week will be episode 20. This is the last podcast in this Roman Forum series. So we'll move on to another subject. So wherever you are on our planet, I hope you have a great Saturday day and weekend. So we'll see you later. Take care, my friends. Bye.
What you do, you into me, but I can't let it go so easily. Until I see what it could be eternity or just a week. We know our chemistry.